Monday night, 8 p.m. Eastern. This is In the Pursuit of Joy. Just playing with the tools here. I'm having a good time. Uh, this is probably about the most productive part of my week. So I'm pretty pleased with that. I hope you've had a good weekend. I know I did. I hit one goal of walk runs. For my attempt to start training for a triathlon. So I had to start someplace. So I got about 74.9. I want to round it up to 7.5 miles this week because why not? It's just a matter of just a slight adjustment. And speaking of adjustments, because I'm pretty sure I've missed somewhere. I've added distance and it just wasn't recorded. Like the previous week, I actually made it to the pool, and for some reason my Apple Watch, which is really happy with me, but the only thing that's happy about me right now is my Apple Watch. So I'm always moving. It just loves it. If it had any feelings, it would definitely be in love right now. And I ended up being in the pool, and I was exhausted. I just worked an overnight shift, and I was not feeling quite human, but I was in the middle of running a really big errand, something really big, and I had to get it done in a hurry. And I've worked nights before work, and if you work an overnight shift, you'll know how to push for that second wind. You're tired, you could just drop right now and just totally go to sleep and not wake up for many hours. But when you have something in mind, something that needs to be done, you find that energy. There's always an energy reserve somewhere. It could be mental, it could be physical, and a combination of the two. It just clicks. And next thing you know, you're telling your brain's like, yeah, I'm really tired. I really could use some sleep right now, but I gotta get this done. And it was one of those times. And I was getting a lot of stuff done. It was hot out, and I was just moving so much, and I just gifted myself just a little while in the pool after many weeks of not being not having the ability to swim. And it was hard. It was the hardest swim, where all I could do was tell myself, just enjoy the cool water. I went to the indoor pool, by the way. I was not gonna get more sunburn than I already have this summer. My speedo marks are still pretty bright red on my back. Actually, they're done peeling, so I'm healing up, but I'm not going outside. I'm already overheated and I'm tired. And all I could think about was just getting in the pool, and I just swam just for the enjoyment of being in the water. And I allowed myself to do that, and I covered a little distance, but it was nothing to write home about. And my Apple Watch, for some reason, it kept switching. Sometimes it works really strangely in the water. It gets kind of wobbly, really, really strange. And I realized that it was calculating an elliptical run, and I had to shut it off. And I'm just shaking my head like I don't remember activating that. I said pool swim, indoor pool swim. And then I went back to swimming some laps slowly and just took my time, and I completed another set. And then I realized it was actually marking time for yoga, and I just got really mad. I just shut down the watch and started over, and I missed. Like I said, it's me probably just operator headspace. Basically, I pressed the wrong button, thinking the screen gets a little wobbly. Like I said, when you get in the water, it's kind of slippery, and I just said, screw it, I'm just going to continue to swim, and whatever was missed, just like that 0.49, I'm pretty sure I've hit something. I'm going to attribute it to not operating my Apple Watch correctly. So I'm pretty sure I've clocked in a whole lot more mileage in the past week. So then I managed to climb out all my muscles, head to toe. I was just exhausted from work. And yeah, it was challenging. I managed to get out of the water, and I went into the steam room, and thankfully I was the only one there. Usually there are a lot of women come in, and they're just chatting how they have energy. They just worked out, and the only one thing I want to do in a steam room is just let crap come out of my skin, through my pores, just get all that stuff that I don't need out of my skin. And I just went quiet. And thankfully, it was not like a bunch of people just holding, a chat party in there. And I was falling asleep there. And the parts of my brain that are supposed to keep me alive kept telling me, hey, no sleeping here. This is not where you sleep. And I had no idea where I was going to sleep that day. It's a long story. I had to do things quickly. I'm just kind of relocating, and I figured it out. But it was a long day, and that swim kind of finished me off a little bit. But my day did not end until later on that afternoon. So I had gone well over 24 hours awake. I've done this before, but it's still just as it's just as challenging. And so I got a little bit of mileage. No bicycle runs yet. We'll see. I can always rent. I don't want to do the stationary bike unless the weather's really bad. Then I'll work out indoors. But I could rent a bike and start forcing a little bit of that part of the training just to get used to all three. So I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to do that. But talking about miscalculation, because, adjustments, you move a little bit to the left or to the right, it can make a big difference in anything you want to do. And it got me to thinking about the 1970s. There was a plane crash, and I know I'm getting ahead of the story. I'm going to start with the ending pretty much, and then work my way back. Where in New Zealand there was like a big thing in the 1970s, a tourism, Antarctica tourism, and it was basically people who can afford to get on a charter flight to Antarctica. I think it was like 11 hours leaving from Auckland, and then it had 2 other stops on the way back to New Zealand from Antarctica, and they got to make the loop-de-loop around something it's an active volcano called Mount Erebus, and those were pretty successful. They started in 1977, and I guess they were pretty glamorous. They had drinking, food, and people could take video from the plane, and extraordinary stuff. How in the 20th century, aviation can just actually be used, it's used obviously for transportation, but that people actually had an opportunity to see something so wild as Antarctica, other than people who are scientists. And I happen to know someone who has a son who works in Antarctica. Every few months he goes there. That's one part of the world I have not been to yet, and I would be curious. And so the plane crashed. But how the plane crash came about is very interesting. The flight had been, they were just introducing at the time computerized systems where they actually plotted the routes for these flights and briefed the pilots. And I'm going to make it very simple because it's more complex than that, and because not only for aviation, from what I know, everybody has a checklist. And the Navy used to laugh at the people that worked in aviation and the airfield because they're checklist people. And there's a good reason for that. Because just like in my walk runs this past week, I can kind of, number can be fungible, okay? You can adjust it a little bit. Like I'm just going to round it up. And I can, mathematically, I can round up 7.49, right? To 5. 7.5. I know I've made the distance. I'm just tabulating all my numbers from what my little computer on my wrist has picked up, basically. But for aviation, everybody has to have a checklist. If you make an adjustment in anything, a route or the distance that you go from point A to point C, possibly to point C, they have everybody in the system, from pilots to the ground crew. Everyone has to go through checklists, and they have to check that they're all on the same page. And I know that that's a musical term, but it's an apt term. Everybody is actually going by the same line of thinking that we check in. So we move something, and someone will be affected. And so it turns out that for the ground systems, the pilots have been flying a particular flight route that went around the active volcano, and it went into more of a flat area towards McMurdo Station. You can look that up online, and which is flatter, but actually afforded them, well, first of all, not going around the big mountain, and actually getting some sightseeing, be able to see something safely. So they practiced that for like 19 months, and there were a series of changes in how they approached the volcano, and someone, when they entered, they plotted and entered an updated route. To update it, they actually fat fingered it. They fingered the data entries. Actually, what went in was garbage. They fat fingered it by actually 2 digits. It's supposed to be like a 4, and it went to like a 6. So, and like I said, I'm skipping a lot of stuff in between for the story, but in essence, the adjustment to steer the pilots, because the pilots can navigate by sight, what they see actually with their eyesight, and they can also, and they use technology, of course. Their the instrumentation is guiding them. So you have the computer, that the guidance systems that you have, your autopilot and everything. They have computerized systems on board and also on the ground. So this is a ground system, and it's telling it this is the way you're supposed to go. And someone actually fat fingered it and put in the wrong number. So the wrong number is something that they thought actually went in concert with the change of route, because they wanted to go around the volcano, and that's the most simplified way I can explain it. And there's some sources where you can actually look it up later, and it tells you detail by detail how they got off course. So the crash was caused by a human error of data entry. It just boiled down. This is a few years after the fact, and investigations and a scandal and everything else. This turned out to be the biggest civilian air disaster in New Zealand history. So they're still really touched by it. They have it's pretty an emotional thing for them. And through all the investigations, the years it took to break down what happened, the margin of error from putting a 4 putting a 6 instead of a 4. It was supposed to be deviate from the mountain basically like 2 point some odd miles, not even 3, versus it readjusted the trajectory of the flight to close to 30 nautical miles. It was something like 27 to 29 miles, nautical miles, meaning that it put them directly into the path of Mount Erebus. It put them on a crash course, basically. But the pilots were not briefed. And I'm sure they're still doing navigation this way, but lessons learned. The harrowing excursion and trying to go out and find survivors and all that, and eventually they, like a day later, they found the lack of communications from the aircraft. Supposed to be an 11-hour trek that it went on and on with no communications with the aircraft. So they sent out search parties. The U.S. got involved with military aircraft, and they searched, and I think it took another day, and the weather conditions would not have allowed to do recovery right away. And of course, the first thing that they want to do the black box, the black box, and I think it's the cabin recorder, and those were recovered. But pilots that flew by saw evidence of a crash up the side of the volcano, but the winds were high and were scattering debris everywhere, so it was not going to be an easy expedition. So it took some time to actually get on site and set up a camp at the base and all that. And you can look it up, that Mount Erebus, or I think it's Erebus.com. You can look that up, and that's a whole investigation is fully documented there. It's an interesting thing, but what you think is an adjustment that won't have an effect on anything you're doing, it's a huge gap from 2 miles to almost 30 miles. that's a straight course for disaster. And not comparing my running attempts this past couple of weeks, that where I'm adjusting, just a slight tweak, just to match numbers, because I don't like to leave numbers off and move a decimal point here and there. It doesn't. I mean, it adds up. My mileage adds up, and it still serves a purpose. It doesn't necessarily hurt me unless I have a particular mileage in mind, and then I just have to go out and make the commitment to complete those miles. But when it comes to aviation, I've worked in security, same thing. When you move one thing here, it's going to affect something someplace else. If it's a building or a perimeter, if you move put one less person on patrol, that's going to affect things. You start to pick up patterns in your own thinking and of miscalculation. You think that what you have. And even though you go through a checklist, and I may have to talk about checklists later, because, like I said, a lot of us in the military, we laughed about the people that did checklists, but that's why they have to do checklists. And having studied this Mount Erebus disaster, it's a prime example. Maybe many other crashes where there's human error, but someone forgot to tell someone else, who forgot to tell someone else. They did not convey information properly. Where not everyone is understanding the process in a standardized way. And this is why these problems happen. But we do it to ourselves too. It could be money. Just you make a one financial decision, and you're not considering. I've done this too, by the way. I'm not considering what else is tied. What is this money tied to already before I even commit it to something, and we make these decisions daily, and not taking a few extra seconds to commit ourselves to thinking, to actually engage in critical thinking, whereby our options, the situation at hand, and our options and what we have to do. Sometimes we have to do nothing. Sometimes the way it is, it doesn't need to be engaged in any way. You don't have to spend that money right now. If you articulate that this doesn't serve me financially right this minute, thank you very much, and let me consider it, politely walk away, or let me think about it, let me sleep on it. There's so many delayed tactics that they're not cowardly by any stretch of imagination. I would actually applaud anyone, even myself, when I delay a decision. A decision to take action doesn't have to be on the spot, but sometimes when it is, we have to consider all these factors. What else? What's going to be the cost for the decision? And also who else is affected, and what else is tied to this decision? Is there something else that I've committed to that will be affected in a negative way? It could hurt me, it could hurt someone else. It's just letting go and just let it all hang out and figure out, well, throw caution to the wind. I'm just going to do the following thing and not feel that I have to kind of review my notes per se, just to look deep inside and figure out, what am I missing? Why am I making this decision? Is there going to be not just a cost in the long term, but also because it will have an effect. Everything we do has an effect, of course, but also just create a little concern for the immediate future. In that, am I going to be happy with this? And just a little sliding of the rule can get you closer to the center where there's a little bit more stability, or you can go to the opposite ends of the spectrum. They're both bad. Too much of on the positive or the negative are going to be bad. And I've been looking at just things that would make me think about making slight adjustments where I could control a little bit better, not just the outcome, but how I feel about what I'm doing. I was talking about athletes last week. We hang on to that feeling that we're we just don't want to let go, because if what we achieve something for so long and we work really hard, we want to keep doing it. I can understand there's love behind that. But many other athletes just can easily just say, okay, I'm done. I've achieved as high as I could go, and now I want to branch out into other things, start a family or a business, or inspire other people. I can teach, I can coach. They want to keep growing in other ways. So that's also a healthy outlet. And I was studying the importance of grip strength, and thinking about a pinch of salt. If you're near your kitchen and you're fixing dinner now, maybe it's kind of late for some, but not for some of us. Some of us eat a little bit late sometimes, and you're working on a recipe, and I'm shifting away from a plane crash, but a plane crash could be just as easily as anything else we're working on. It could be a recipe if you're not really good in the kitchen, but if you question the steps, well, first of all, just like plotting a course for aircraft, there has to be a lot of planning and rehearsing and testing of a route. And then, like I said, there have to be checklists. That means you have kind of like a recipe. You have some elements that have to go into plotting these routes so that they're successful. You don't end up with, a terrible crash like that. It's a crude example, but I've been studying closely. Not an expert in climbing, but I've been watching great climbers like Alex Honnold, where he was interviewed by Joe Rogan a couple of times. And I know it's in a video and they show a picture, but he shows there's a technique called pinching. And he's got strong grips. Climbers have to develop that part of the body. It's being able to grip, because it doesn't matter how much you weigh. If you cannot hold it, then there's no point in climbing. It means certain death, probably. And if you look him up online, Alex Honnold is an unassuming guy, but he's just totally unafraid to undertake a dangerous climb. He's been doing that since childhood. But there was a thing about his hands, but they were talking about sometimes you're actually holding on for balance, and just to hold on to a position of the side of some rock and to a small crevice by pinching the thumb and the index finger together. Just like when you go in the kitchen and you're working on a recipe, just like the Salt Bay guy. I don't know why people think it's so exciting or sexy or whatever. Good for him. He's got some style. You just grab a pinch. That's the pinching. What does a pinch of salt have to do with anything? What does a pinching of taking two fingers? How strong are these two fingers where you've developed so much strength in your grip and your hand, where two fingers can hold you on the side of a rock? Your feet somehow, I don't know where your feet would be positioned and what the other hand would be positioned, where it would be positioned to balance out where you're standing. You're really holding on to the side of a rock. And the pinching technique, it could be the whole hand, like he explains, like actually, it could be a long, big crevice, and you can put your whole hand in, and you actually make a fist, so it's holding you. Use your body like it's an instrument, and keep you from falling. And I've seen pictures of this pinch, and I wish I could find it now, but I'm going to have to look it up, and maybe I'll add it to a video later. I haven't been doing video for a reason. I don't have all my equipment with me, so I'm only sticking to the podcast for audio. That's the main reason. I cannot operate both at the same time. I haven't been able to work it out. And they zoomed in on a show, and I just couldn't believe that. Just a pinch, just like you go in the kitchen and you're working on a recipe, and cooking you can, and they're all in the same. It's something you're working on. It's a meal. You putting together a meal, and it's requiring salt. And people wonder, sometimes they leave it like, it's not going to work. Like, I already put all the ingredients in them the bowl, and I'm mixing. It could be, I did a lot of baking for many years. I was a pretty good baker. And I think a pretty decent cook. And And I study some advanced techniques and all that. I know that every time, even when I go eat out, I know where someone somewhere in that kitchen forgot to put salt in the meal. Not just the meal, but also baked goods like a biscuit. I'm passionate about biscuits. I could do a whole show about biscuits, but just baking in general, and salt, just like that pinch of salt. You could be making oatmeal or cream of wheat or something really simple like that. My mother used to do that. And you used to put sugar. I know I grew up in those years where people used to put sugar in their, their hot cereals. And some people still do today, but it was a common thing just to sweeten your cereal. And we grew up with sugar. That's how it is. But sugar and salt, when they're together, they balance out. In fact, if you want to make something sweeter but more controlled sweetness, you put salt in it. It depends how much it is, but when it comes to baking, just like aviation, there's a checklist. It's called a recipe. It's the same thing. There's some elements that have to be there, and these have been tested. So when you get a recipe from someone, a book, or even from a website, a cooking website, these have been tested in kitchens. They actually have to have formulas. It's a formula. They put them together, and they have to have certain elements. And certain elements, they have to be in that recipe, because you don't get the same result because you have to have that chemical reaction. And salt is the big ingredient. It's the one thing that we need it in our diet. We have it on our bodies. We need it for health. Too much of it will kill you. Not enough of it will kill you. And it just makes it just right. If you salted your beef stew too much, you can put sugar in it. You see how they balance out? Too much salt, and you mix it with the sugar. Things are too sour, and you put salt in them. It tones it down. When you're baking, it controls moisture. If you're making bread, if you ever made bread from scratch, I know I have made plenty of it. It adds balance. So a pinch, just that little bit of movement, that little bit of action, that pinch is all the strength you need to put together your baked goods. That's why the yeast rises properly and you get fluffy bread, and then it allows for browning. And if you're making things that require browning, like a croissant, did I say that correctly? I should practice my French more often. If you do cookies, they don't brown too much. Buns, you want them to be golden brown on the outside and just a little bit of crispiness, unless you put an egg wash and all that, and it aids it. But salt seems to be the one element that brings it all together. It makes it not only palatable, but it makes it joyful. You get that piece of bread that you made, or that pastry, and that's the end result. You can leave it out. You can still have a hockey puck to eat, and bread won't rise as well. You can't depend on the other ingredients. Yeast won't do it on its own. It's got to be activated. Each one activates the other one. Some ingredients like baking soda, baking powder, that you see the moisture or heat that activates them. They all work differently, and that's why they're not one and the same. But that's why they're called for in different recipes, because you want that special effect. Egg whites, same thing. You put a little bit of salt when you're making them fluffy. And on top of sugar, of course, you're making meringue and stuff like that. And I know I went from talking about an airplane crash that killed 200 and some odd people plus the 20 crew members. Big disaster, big miscalculation. Someone didn't add that pinch of salt, or they'd put in too little. And like the climber, well-known climber, he is featured in the film Free Solo. I highly recommend you watch that, because not only him climbing El Capitan, I think it's the 3-mile ascent. No one has ever done it with no ropes. He's the one that does it with no ropes. That was in 2017. And that's why he had big fame and all that. But he's been climbing for a long time. He's still a young man, but he's been climbing all his life. But the cinematographers are also world top climbers, and they also had to know about that pinch. For climbers, it almost makes me want to take up climbing just to experience this. I have issues with my hands. I don't have big, strong hands, so I don't do pull-ups anymore and things like that. I've lost my grip strength. I would have to rebuild it. Plus, I have some injuries to my thumbs. But these people, they build strength from the smallest part of their body. The hands can be powerful and they can be very weak. You can't even hold a cup of coffee. Climbing is not for us. It has to be, you have to build it pinch by pinch. Every little part of your body becomes a tool. You just wedge into a crevice up the side of some mountain someplace. And nobody else but you is doing this. And it's something that we have to watch out for, is miscalculating how we make decisions, how we approach. When I say problems, I don't mean as negative. Problem is a question. And I wanted to shift our language here to something positive, because every time we encounter a roadblock, it's a problem. But a problem, just like in school, they give you a word. Oh, I hated those word problems in math, didn't you? Some people are really good at them. You have to analyze what's going on, and there has to be a sense of balance. And how can someone balance themselves just by holding to the side of a rock and just pinching just enough with 2 fingers? That pinch of salt delivers. It's basically the difference between having a flatbread that's tasteless. First of all, it doesn't taste like anything you want to eat, or fluffy bread that you want to put butter on and just enjoy, or that pastry, like I explained. And it's that little pinch that helps you stay attached to the side of a rock as you're climbing. Because once you start climbing, you should not consider yourself that you're going to come down. You have to keep going. I know climbers do this. They make a commitment, like plotting the aerial charts. The routes where you're going to go. There are going to be obstacles, and everybody has to be keenly aware of the fact that they have to navigate around things that will not move. They will not give unto you. You have to go around those obstacles. And like I said, with the air crash, from 2 miles to almost 30 miles, that's huge. From having a pinch of salt to having no salt, that is huge. That will have an effect, not to you, to the naked eye, but it will have an effect. And the inability to hold a grip long and stay calm enough, long enough, in a very tight space, or where there's no place for your body to rest other than just like goats. I've seen goats in many places. You know how they kind of stand on the side of a hill, and you have no idea how they defy gravity. I know they fall, but they get up and they climb back up. They know how to manipulate the body and gravity and the surface where they stay upright. They stay attached to on the firm land. And this week I wanted to address having that ability to adjust, but knowing that when we adjust ourselves, when we're growing and we're improving, we have to. I could keep harping on documenting, because if you're not didn't start a journal, like I've been listening to this crazy lady for months now, and I don't know where she's going. She doesn't know where she's going. I know where I'm going right now, but that's going to come out later on. I'll reveal a little bit at a time, because I like to have a little bit of suspense, I figure it makes it interesting. But when I'm speaking in general terms, because some of these things I put into practice, and I have observed my own behavior where I've made adjustments, a slight adjustment of saying yes or no will derail something quickly. Or it would actually get you what you want immediately. It's amazing. It's amazing who to ask when you need help and you're holding back because you don't know how much do you reveal when you're asking for help, or do you just let it all hang out and come across with the one thing that I tell people not to do, and I don't try not to sound like I'm in a state mind of lack, because people are kind of allergic to that. They sense it. They don't really come seeking you, like, can I help you with your, with what you're lacking. They're just, all I'm asking for when I need help is information. What's the information? What am I missing? When I make my next move, when I make my next decision, and something that I need to achieve, or if I'm in a position in my life where I may appear kind of stuck, but I'm trying to work it out. It's like a puzzle. I'm trying to figure out that one thing that I'm missing so that I can get out of it and graduate to the next level. Maybe I'll come from really up high, and I have been living kind of a life for many years, and just falling into various levels of, I'm being stuck, like thinking that I have some level of success, but I'm kind of falling. Like I'm not as good as I used to be. I don't make as much money as I used to, etc. And suddenly I find myself at the very bottom. And I think sometimes the adjustment that is needed is, it could be just let go and hit rock bottom. Not the climbers. The climbers know this. They make the commitment to continue because that's the complete opposite of what they want to do. So once they get up there, they have to make it happen. This is life or death. Doesn't matter where you're climbing. When you get up on an airplane, you have to go by the checklist and know that all the elements are there and everybody agrees. Yeah, airplanes are running pretty good. Everything's in place. This is going to be my route. Do we agree on that? Yep. Everybody on the ground agrees. Yep. This is how you're going to get there. This is how much fuel you have. You don't need any repairs. This is how far you can go. To push the limits of the aircraft. It's the same thing. How far can I go and do my run walks? I can push as hard until I know I hit that. Maybe I get that second wind. Like when I try to go swimming or working out after a long shift. And I do physical work when I'm working for 10 hours and I do 40 hours straight. So I'm pretty exhausted by the time my work week is done, physically and mentally, where all I want to do is sleep. So I have to make adjustments to make that commitment. The adjustment is enough that where I can just move. I can go for walks, and then I walk and turn it to walk, run, and then condition my body further to accept more of that burden, physical burden, and then accept it as normal. And if you're not journaling these small adjustments that you make daily or weekly or maybe hourly, who knows, you can check in on yourself every few minutes, like every half an hour or so. Hey, how am I feeling about what I'm doing? Is this something that I want to engage in? Am I still committed to it? And go through your checklist. So having an idea of what you want is always going to be the one element that you're going to need to start. But also the commitment and the willingness to act, and then continue acting until it's done. Not until you think maybe it's not working. Like I said last week, before, like people quit well into an effort, and they see themselves like, okay, maybe kind of, sort of, maybe I shouldn't have gotten involved in this in the first place. And somehow the effect comes out at some point in the future, and you see it. It could be like days or weeks after you quit something, and there's the effect, and you're thinking, okay, so if I had not quit, I would have been able to enjoy this outcome. So I wanna keep reiterating that there's a need for maintaining a journal of how you're making adjustments. That pinch. That's all you need, is a little pinch. And the effort is going to definitely grow on its own. You just need to actually add that one element to everything you do. And that's I know that's kind of a weird combination, but hopefully you can catch on to the point that we have the adjustment can be little. It could be life or death. It could be a meal that doesn't taste so good, or you can fall off the side of a rock that you're climbing because you thought you conquer that piece of rock. You thought that your body and your mind could do that. Something you can achieve. Not many people do that, There's a handful of them worldwide. If you compare population of the world, that's not a lot of people. If I were to count the people that really excel at it, and there are many others who are just being born and they have the ability, their bodies they build them early on. That's what they want to do, and they put in the hours, they put in the effort, and so going through this mental or written checklist of the elements of what you believe will be needed to achieve your goals in life, to attain that inner joy that you're finding a purpose, if that's going to be your goal, or your gift. If you guys still not figured out what your gift is, this may be a good time to adopt that. And I know I am, because I kind of leveled out recently, where I thought I had achieved some goals, and I thought that the goals once I got there, they really didn't mean that much, so I did not pursue them. I found it to be surprising, but in that discovery, I learned that maybe I want to cut myself a break and just continue to document my journey, because I'm bound to fall into a place where I really want to be, where I'm going to be at the happiest, and that on its own is it's truly valuable. Is that little pinch, like I said, go in your kitchen and take some salt and between your two fingers, the index finger and the thumb, and just flick it like the Salt Bay guy does on the videos, and just maybe over your shoulder if you're superstitious. I know I'm not, but people do that. Just flick it. And this is all that's needed to make great bread. Just use that concept to get you going, and whatever it is that you want to start working on, hopefully this week. And like I've said many times, we should all endeavor to be better, to grow every day by maybe 1%. Something. There should be some form of growth where you learn something and you accept it as new, that you accept a new thing into your life that hopefully is positive. And I think that's all I got. And I want to thank you for sticking around. I appreciate you. And next week I should have something exciting for you. We shall see what that is. Thank you for listening. And I wish you a good night and a great week.